Good afternoon. My name is Kaylee Vinus. I am a registered nurse at the Surgical and Medical Intensive Care Units at Morristown Medical Center. Today I will be presenting to you my strategic plan that I created to address our unit-based problem of nurse retention. Nurse retention is an issue that affects every unit in the hospital, not just our own. However, over the last several years, our nurse retention numbers have plummeted, leading to high staffing ratios, increased need for overtime shifts, and nurse burnout. Strategic planning establishes a clear and explicit framework and criteria for making day-to-day decisions, and it simplifies the managerial decision-making process. This presentation will address the steps I took to formulate and create a strategic plan and the steps. The first step in creating a strategic plan is performing a SWOT analysis. This analysis identifies the aspect of the organization that may be hidden from the eye of the leaders and highlight the strengths of the organization as well. The SWOT analysis looks at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the organization, or in this case, our unit. This SWOT analysis will specifically look at the medical and surgical intensive care units at Morristown Medical Center and will compare them interdepartmentally to the critical care units of the CVICU, the CCU, the pediatric ICU, and the emergency department. From this SWOT analysis, you can see that I found our strengths to be a highly desired place of employment in the critical care unit, a Level 1 trauma center and a certified designated stroke center, a magnet-recognized hospital, a Gold Beacon award-winning ICU from the AACN, and in our strengths also lie our enhanced capabilities, which include an advanced high-level care, a high number of critical care certified nurses, compensation for higher degrees, multiple orientation tracks for varying experience levels, our organizational internship program, as well as the new nurse residency program. Our weaknesses of the ICU are a high-stress, constant environment, frequent ethical dilemmas and mortalities, high standards of skills and professionalism, high turnover rate, including the high return to school for advanced degrees like CRNA and nurse practitioner, poor camaraderie and lack of peer support, bullying, cliques, poor staffing, including the need for increased overtime, nurse burnout, and higher acuity patients with high nurse staffing ratios. Opportunities that were found for ICU include creating a mentorship program that is specialized for the ICU, team building, including organizational development classes, leadership, empowering the informal leaders, increased the leadership opportunities, increased unit involvement, and increased the per diem positions. Finally, the threats that I identified were found to be the high volume of hospitals in the surrounding area, increased competition between the healthcare systems, financial implications for the high turnover rate, the high cost of training new staff, our aging patient population, and the higher acuity patients. With this SWOT analysis completed and the problem identified, a strategic goal was formulated. The strategic goal that I created for the ICU is to retain 80% of new hired nurses from September of 2018 to January 2019 for 1 year or greater. After identifying the strategic goal through the SWOT analysis, a strategy map was then created to provide a visual representation of the cause and effect relationship of the functional goals, stakeholders, and operations of the unit. The strategy map looks to align all of these goals to provide a clear direction for how to align the unit with this strategic goal. The strategy map looks at the learning and growth goals, the internal goals, customer goals, and finally the financial goals. The learning and growth goals included fostering a positive environment free of bullying and identify negative behaviors, increase the awareness of the areas of improvement with benchmarking statistics, increase the utilization of organizational development courses. The internal goals were then created to include create a new hire mentorship program, increase the formal leadership opportunities, create a unit-based team building day. From these internal goals, the customer goals were then created to include to increase RN self-confidence by increasing their skill set, abilities, and support, increase recognition and feedback, improve overall morale and camaraderie. Finally, the financial goals are then set, and they included to provide higher quality, cost-effective care, increase our HCAHPS scores and Medicare reimbursement rates, increase revenue by decreasing the cost of nursing orientation. Achieving these functional goals will enable the ICU to achieve its overall strategic goal of retaining 80% of the new hire nurses from September 2018 to January 2019 for 1 year or more. With the previous steps completed, a stakeholder analysis was then done, which placed each stakeholder into their respective power interest group. Within these groups, a different management tactic or strategy will be utilized, and the first group is the high interest, high power stakeholders. This group is composed of senior ICU staff, new hire ICU nurses, the ICU clinical coordinators, the ICU educators, and organizational development. These stakeholders would be managed by the management strategies of management by outcomes and crisis planning. The strategy for this group is designed to achieve the outcome of a team environment by creating bonds, finding mentors, holding each other accountable for their negative actions, and being active participants in the hiring of new staff. Certain stakeholders, such as the senior staff, coordinators, and educators, will also be a part of the crisis planning strategy. This would occur in the event of a unit breakdown where staff have reached a critical point and are considering leaving or have expressed feelings of rejection, negativity, or bullying. A crisis plan would then be implemented to trace back to the root of the problem, eliminate the issue, and then stabilize the unit. The next group that we're going to discuss are the low-interest, high-power stakeholders. These stakeholders include the ICU manager, ICU physicians, and our patients. Here, the ICU manager is going to be active in contingency planning. Contingency planning means they're planning for unexpected events, like a surge census, a low census, a code green, like an internal emergency, or situations that place our staff in high-stress situations. The ICU physicians and patients, while they hold power, they have very little interest in the outcome of this goal, but they would both benefit from the outcome, because they would find better performance, increased patient care, and a better healing environment. The next group that we're going to look at are the high-power, low-interest stakeholders. These stakeholders are our ICU nursing assistants, the ICU clinical nurse specialist, the director of nursing, and the chief nursing officer. For this group, management by means would be utilized. The ICU nursing assistant and the clinical nurse specialist would all have high interest in the goal being achieved because they're daily active members of our unit, but they hold little power in the retention of the new hire nurses. All of these stakeholders would be managed by methods that were utilized to successfully complete the goal rather than the goal itself. These stakeholders would participate in fostering a positive environment, identify bullies, finding areas of improvement, and participation in the organizational development courses and team building. Finally, the last group that we're going to look at are the low-interest, low-power stakeholders. These stakeholders are the ICU respiratory therapist, our ancillary staff like physical therapy and occupational therapy, housekeeping, our floor nurses, and the community that we serve. This also includes our patient families. While these stakeholders are all vital to the organization and how we thrive our unit, right now in this action plan, we're just going to need to monitor them. However, they will remain partners in care, providing feedback during the evaluation process. Our action plan will include the different management tactics that we previously discussed, but we will also ensure that we maintain our outstanding cost-effective quality care. Our day-to-day business functions should not be directly affected, but we should see changes like increasing rewards and recognition and increasing the opportunity to our staff members to utilize what our organization provides, like organizational development classes and concern. The leadership strategies that we would implement through this process would include a clear, visible leadership team, open communication, having clear roles and accountability, and defined hiring practices. This will all help engage our staff members and keep them wanting this strategic plan to see fulfillment. For the successful implementation of the strategic plan, our lines of communication between all stakeholders must stay open. This includes the lines of communications from the top down, but also from the bottom up. For this rollout, we will be utilizing both formal and informal methods of communication. Some formal methods that we would use include email, information in our daily huddle, staff meetings, and one-on-one meetings. These formal communication channels would be utilized depending on the sensitivity and the complexity of the information that we are looking to disseminate. The emails and staff meetings would contain mostly the complex and sensitive information that needed to be disseminated to the staff. These channels would provide stakeholders the ability to absorb, digest, and respond to the information being provided to them in real time. This would include hiring new staff, new open positions within the unit, any new roles that are available, and the latest statistics that are driving unit changes. The daily huddle would provide the continual and constant repetition of the goal that is needed to drive change. This huddle we already do daily, and nothing would really change with it other than increasing the opportunities for mentors and mentees and any organizational development classes that we are going to be utilizing in the future. The one-on-one meetings would be utilized to handle the more sensitive topics, such as accusations of bullying or negative behaviors, where a leader wanted to sit down with an individual to better understand the root of this problem. Informal means of communication would be peer-to-peer interaction, our ICU social media page, and private messages between the staff members. These channels would be utilized to handle day-to-day discussions and to help increase the urgency for the need for this change. These channels would be utilized mostly by the mentors and the mentees, and it would not handle any sensitive or complex information. As a leadership team, we would really rely on our formal channels during this rollout. With all of these steps now taken to get us closer to our strategic goal, we are going to need to have ways of evaluating our success. To evaluate the success of the strategic plan and to measure the success of the functional goals, we will be utilizing the feedback control model. The key to this model is setting up the 4 key steps, which include establishing standards, measuring performance, comparing performance to the standards, and making corrections as necessary. As nurses, we really use this model without even knowing it in our day-to-day care, very similar to how we assess, diagnose, treat, and implement our nursing plans. For the strategic goal, many of the functional goals were subjective, so this gives us the opportunity to hear the feedback from the stakeholders and their perception. By utilizing the feedback method, we would be able to get firsthand feedback from those that were being directly affected by the strategic plan. This method would also offer feedback from the new hired RNs that we are looking to retain. This would provide us with a better understanding of what they are seeing as positives, negatives, and areas that we can also improve to increase our nursing retention rates. This would provide us feedback also into how to keep our scorecard balanced, ensuring that we find our balance between our financial, customer, internal, and learning goals. We will also utilize our benchmarking capabilities that we have here at Morristown Medical Center and making sure that we maintain our high standards and seeing the areas in which we can improve based off of other hospitals in the area. Finally, we can track our turnover rate versus our historical turnover rate. This will give us our actual number if we met our strategic goal. And then afterwards, after a year in the unit, we can provide these new hires a survey that helps them explain their experience to us and whether they stayed or whether they left. The effective implementation of this strategic goal would see our nurse retention rate decrease and our revenues increase. I would like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch my presentation. Thank you.